controversy over VCU's new policy regarding faculty promotions. Professors are outraged. We'll tell you how the university is responding. We're talking to young voters from both sides about the new presidential administration. Hear what they had to say on Inauguration Day. We're remembering Henry Marsh III. He was the first African-American mayor of Richmond and a key figure of the civil rights movement in Virginia. VCU InSight starts now. Hello, welcome to the first show of VCU InSight for the spring semester. I'm Madison Cox. A memo was sent out to VCU faculty and staff stating that professors without a terminal degree will no longer be eligible for a pay increase. In response to this, VCU held a meeting for faculty and staff to respond. VCU InSight Alex Wilson with the story.
VCU faculty are upset over this memo from the provost office. It says, professors that do not possess a terminal degree, which is a doctorate in most fields, will not be eligible for a promotion. This new action will be in place immediately. Faculty members expressed their outrage at a meeting held by the provost office in response to the outcry from the memo. The provost told us not to record video of the public meeting, but we did take photos and record audio. Faculty were not shy when speaking out.
Do it in such a way that affects that people who are already in the process of promotion are being told basically in the 11th hour, all the stuff you did is pointless, and we're going to disregard decades of precedent at the university just because we want to.
VCU student Abdullah Muhammad also spoke up for professors, criticizing management at VCU.
Because frankly, we don't come to VCU at all for BOP. We come for faculty and for our education.
VCU President Michael Rao was not in attendance at the meeting. He did, however, speak about the relationship between faculty and students at the State of the University address.
Our faculty, staff, and students, because of your conscientiousness and your deep, caring sense of other human beings, you really made it another year of exceptional growth and progress.
I'm standing right outside the VCU library where the State of VCU address just wrapped up. President Rao spoke on the growth of VCU and AI development within VCU. However, he did not mention the memo sent out to VCU faculty and staff that stated that you needed a terminal degree in order to be eligible for a raise or a promotion. I spoke with President Rao and asked him about this, and he declined to comment on the issue. In response to the backlash, VCU's provost office released a follow-up memo to clarify they will still consider all applications submitted by staff for the upcoming promotion cycle. It also mentions alternative pathways for promotion will be explored for those who do not have a terminal degree. Reporting at VCU for VCU InSight in the newsroom at VCU, I'm Alex Wilson.
VCU President Michael Rao says the university is emphasizing the importance of AI. Rao highlighted this at the annual State of the University address last week. He says staying on top of the rapid progression of AI is a top priority for the university. VCU just launched an AI minor and spoke about efforts of VCU's faculty to integrate it into existing courses. Rao also made sure to emphasize the importance of research at VCU and encourages each student to join the university's research mission. In addition, the address also highlighted the importance of a bridge between the student and becoming a professional, with the hope that VCU makes crossing this bridge as easy as possible. People are remembering civil rights icon Henry Marsh III, a state senator and the first African-American mayor of Richmond. VCU InSight reporter Kyler Gilliam has more on Marsh's legacy.
Henry Marsh III's life was full of service, including 22 years here at the state capitol, serving as a Virginia state senator. He died at 91 years old and is being remembered as a key figure in the civil rights movement here in the Commonwealth.
Marsh started as a civil rights lawyer in Virginia, focusing on cases of desegregation and equal opportunity employment. He would then become the first African-American mayor of the city of Richmond in 1977. Marsh would be elected as a state senator in 1992 and served until 2014. Marsh's colleagues will remember his spirit and advocacy. Governor Youngkin pointed out Marsh's leadership and courage in a statement after Marsh's death. Last week, people were able to pay their respects while Marsh was lying in state at the old Senate chamber at the Capitol.
Marsh was laid to rest last week after a celebration of life ceremony at St. Paul Baptist Church. Reporting for VCU InSight in the newsroom at VCU, I'm Kyler Gilliam.
The Virginia General Assembly is ongoing. Democrats and Republicans are working to get their initiatives off the ground and having a little fun while doing so. CNS reporter Brooke Lindeberg has more about the happenings at Virginia's state capitol.
Brunswick's Today returned to the Virginia General Assembly last week. Delegates, senators, and visitors were given a complimentary to-go cup of award-winning stew. Each year, the winner of the Taste of Brunswick Festival heads to the state capitol to dish out their stew. This year, it was Charles Owens and Brothers 3. This event traditionally takes place on every fourth Wednesday in January, but due to inclement weather, was held 8 days later. The long-standing tradition was introduced over 20 years ago. Lawmakers hit the midpoint of General Assembly session, known as Crossover Day. They have 45 days to hear and vote on over 2,000 pieces of legislation, including potential laws. Democrats are advancing constitutional amendments to enshrine abortion rights, protect marriage equality, and for restoration of rights. They also hope to help with funding for housing and support higher minimum wage increases. Republicans are pushing election reform, criminal justice measures, private school vouchers, and tax breaks. Both parties say they support more money for Virginians and maternal health initiatives. Now, surviving House bills head to the Senate, and Senate bills head to the House. While Democrats have a majority in both chambers, some proposals will face the Republican governor's veto pen. Capitol News Service caught up with Democratic and Republican leadership at halftime to hear how this session is advancing for their party. Democratic Senate Majority Leader Scott Sorrell says he is optimistic about key initiatives of the caucus. House Speaker Don Scott tells Capitol News Service the session is going well and he feels confident.
Key priorities is to make sure that we lower prices, lower costs for Virginians, make sure that we do everything that we can to make housing affordable.
Meanwhile, Republicans hold a minority in the House and Senate and are preparing for some key initiatives to be knocked down by crossover. Virginia Republican Party Director Ken Neunenkamp says they are focusing on a budget that keeps costs lower and communities safer. He says it has been challenging, even though some progress has been made.
I think we're looking for a budget that helps all Virginians, but specifically focuses on priorities of putting more money back in people's pockets, keeping communities safer, and letting Virginians keep more of their money.
Capitol News Service will continue to follow the General Assembly, which adjourns at the end of the month.
Testing the limits of executive power, President Donald Trump continues to solidify his roles in the history books. People flocked to D.C. on Inauguration Day to watch history. VCU InSight reporter Sanaya Gary spoke to young voters about what they hope from this administration.
Thousands of supporters of the new president fill in the Capitol and the streets of D.C. But on the other side of the Capitol, protesters express their dislike for the new administration. In both crowds, thousands of young voters reflect on this historic day.
I think in this last election, we showed that we're here and we're here to stay.
Standing in celebration in front of the U.S. Capitol, Devin Martin, who works as a carpenter in Maryland, and full-time student Justice Armstrong says the president's pro-life stance motivated them to vote. Martin is excited to witness the inauguration ceremony.
I'm excited to see J.D. Vance as our vice. I'm excited to see Trump inaugurated again, second time in American history, non-consecutive second term. That's an historic moment.
But as thousands of people gather in celebration, a few metro stops away, protesters like Tuesday Go, who goes by the pronouns they/them, says they are concerned about President Trump's views. And Go strongly opposes the new president's big policy changes. They are glad to see people who agree with their views.
Like in a world without hope, seeing everyone here in camaraderie, arm in arm, together in opposition for a better future, that gives me a lot of hope.
Due to the freezing weather, the presidential inauguration was moved inside to the Capitol Rotunda. The inauguration parade was moved to the Capital One Arena, a building that holds 20,000 people. And according to Reuters, this is just a fraction of the projected 220,000 ticketed guests who were due to watch the ceremony. Security was high outside as thousands of people stood in line for hours to get in, camping out overnight. You can see trash, chairs, even food, where people were standing for more than 9 hours just waiting for this moment. And once the ceremony is over, voters on both sides say they will be watching and following this new leadership. Reporting for VCU InSight and the newsroom at Washington, D.C., I'm Sanaya Gary.
It has been several weeks since President Trump began his term in office. Executive orders have been signed, eliminating diversity, equity, inclusion policies, tackling immigration, and narrowing down on gender-affiliated programs. Some people are concerned that removing DEI initiatives undermines efforts to create equitable workplaces, while the Trump administration claims their new approach will eliminate illegal discrimination. Former DEI Council co-chair Ronald Coles currently works at a private school in Henrico County. He worries this change could actually lead to more inequality.
DEI initiatives were never about hiring less qualified people. It was about offering opportunities to deserving individuals of underrepresented groups who would never have the opportunity otherwise. So those positions, those opportunities could be gone now. Talent is everywhere, access is not.
With the recent yet somewhat unexpected great Supreme Court decision just made, America will once again become a merit-based country. You have to hear that word, merit-based country.
Popular companies like Target and Walmart have already cut DEI programs, while companies like Google and Costco stand firm in keeping these initiatives. There are plans to change downtown Richmond's skyline. Big changes are happening to the long-standing Monroe building. VCU InSight reporter Kendall Taylor has more on what this new building will look like.
The Monroe building is known as Richmond's tallest building, but officials say it's unusable. Now there are plans to replace the iconic structure and make it look like this. The new building will include a parking garage for over 800 spaces, a conference center, and multiple office spaces, according to the Department of General Services. This project will cost around $400 million. The GGS shared the plans after 2 years of debate on the project over budget concerns. The issue became even more intense in January of last year when the state declared the Monroe building as unfunctional. According to Axios, the bathrooms are non-ADA compliant and the elevators frequently get stuck. The new building will be built along East Broad and 14th Street. Officials estimate the design phase will take 2 years and the construction phase will take 3. According to the plans, Monroe building workers will be temporarily relocated to various places among the downtown area. Reporting in Richmond for VCU InSight in the newsroom at VCU, I'm Kendall Taylor.
Many people are looking for ways to give back to their communities. 2 Richmond-based organizations joined forces to clean up a local park during Martin Luther King Jr. Day. VCU InSight reporter Elena Gutowski is at Blackwell Park in Richmond to tell us more.
One of the biggest issues facing Blackwell Park and the area surrounding it is litter. As you can see behind me, there is trash lining the roadway around the park. 2 local organizations decided to take action during Martin Luther King Jr. Day by cleaning up an area surrounding the park. 16 volunteers with Keep Virginia Beautiful and the City of Richmond's Department of Parks and Recreation spent 2 hours cleaning up an area of Blackwell Park. They threw away tires, suitcases, and storage bins, and by the end, they filled 38 bags of litter. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is not only a federal holiday, but also a national day of service. This holiday encourages Americans to honor Dr. King and his legacy through volunteer work and improving their communities. Reporting from Richmond for VCU InSight and the newsroom at VCU, I'm Elena Gutowski.
From Blackwell Street to the Harlem of the South, Richmond's Jackson Ward has had many nicknames throughout the years. This Black History Month, VCU InSight reporter Phoenix Kyle sat down with a man familiar with this historic district.
Thank you, Madison. I'm here with Gary Flowers, who runs a business called Walking the Ward with Gary Flowers that gives tours of some of the historic and educational sites in Jackson Ward. Gary, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to InSight.
Thank you for the invitation.
So can you start by telling us a little bit more about what Walking the Ward with Gary Flowers is?
Absolutely. Founded in 2016, Walking the Ward with Gary Flowers presents to the world the hidden history of Jackson Ward, which is now referred to as historic Jackson Ward. I, through the walking tour or bus tour, traversed the institutions that made Jackson Ward not only known across the country as Black Wall Street, the birthplace of Black capitalism, but also as the Harlem of the South in a social sense.
So can you tell us a little bit about some of the notable people and places that are in historic Jackson Ward?
Yes, absolutely. The churches, most notably historic Ebenezer Baptist Church and historic Six Mountain Zion Baptist Church, are two of the preeminent religious institutions. The historic Armstrong High School, along with the Vanderbiver Catholic Parochial School, the first Black Catholic church in Virginia and the first Black Catholic public school in Virginia. And then the banks. Virginia led the nation in Black-owned banks between 1888 and 1910. At our height, we had 5 Black-owned banks. And so we passed by what was the Second Street Savings Bank, the True Reformers Bank, which was the first Black bank chartered in America.
So you talked a little bit about the banks being part of why we call Jackson Ward Black Wall Street. How about the Harlem of the South? Where did that come from?
The social epicenter of historic Jackson Ward was 2nd Street, known as the Deuce. And that is what I refer to as the corridor of culture and commerce. The 800 Black businesses of Jackson Ward, the 7 Black insurance companies, and the 5 Black banks all rotated around and fed off of what was on 2nd Street. These were hotels like the Slaughters Hotel, the Eggleston Hotel, the Hippodrome Theater, the Coliseum, were all social venues for people not only in Richmond, but people who were traveling through Richmond by way of the Green Book.
So next, can you tell me a little bit about how Jackson Ward was key to the civil rights movement in Richmond?
Yes. Well, first and foremost, Jackson Ward was named after Confederate General Stonewall Jackson. And as such, it was arguably one of the first places of voter suppression and vote gerrymandering for Black men after they received the privilege to vote in 1870 by way of the 15th Amendment. And so there became a civil rights movement in the 1870s. In 1904, 51 years before Mrs. Rosa Parks and Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. led the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott, Mrs. Walker and Mr. Mitchell used their newspapers, the St. Luke Herald, Mrs. Walker, and the Richmond Planet, Mr. Mitchell. They boycotted the segregated trolley car system in Richmond, shutting the business down and putting Richmond on the map. And so many of us in grade school should have learned about the boycott in Richmond in 1904 before we learned about the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955. The values that were birthed in Jackson Ward after the American Civil War are relevant today. Mutual aid societies, self-determination, women's suffrage, the idea of entrepreneurship, and a sense of racial pride and dignity all have relevance in 2025, but they were found in Jackson Ward over 150 years ago.
What are your feelings about the recent trend of discontinuing DEI programs?
I want to quote Democratic leader in the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries, who I think very brilliantly made the point, to which I agree, that diversity, equity, and inclusion are American values. Diversity found in what is written in Latin on our currency here in the United States, e pluribus unum, out of many we are one is diversity. Equity can be found in the 1868 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment holds, among other tenets, equal protection under the law for all citizens. Equity. And then lastly, but surely not least, would be inclusion. Many of us as young children were made to say the Pledge of Allegiance in public school. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic, one nation, under God, indivisible. That's inclusion. And so I agree that DEI, as we know it, is American values.
Thank you so much for joining us. For more information on how to book a tour of Jackson Ward, you can visit the website walkingtheward.com. Madison, back to you.
Now a look at the weather this weekend. Make sure you remember your coat as we will be experiencing a slight drop in temperature in the coming days. Friday will be partly cloudy with a high of 54 and a low of 39 degrees. Saturday will be even cooler with a high of 42 and a low of 29 degrees and cloudy skies throughout the day. Our reporters will be continuing to work on news stories throughout the Richmond area. You can catch the next edition of VCU InSight on February 20th, right here on YouTube. Please remember to like and subscribe for VCU InSight in the newsroom at VCU. I'm Madison Cox.